And I'm Catherine again, and I'm going to add to that lovely introduction by Renee. I come from two backgrounds. As a writer, I started out as Movie Maker magazine as an editor-at-large. I've been at Seattle International Film Festival, director of Slam Dance Film Festival, festival director at Palm Springs over the past 25 years, all with an eye towards world cinema and empowering emerging filmmakers. Oh yeah, that's why you're here. So I'm going to tell you my agenda, and then we're going to dive in. My agenda is to help you guys, as filmmakers, as creative talents, as visual storytellers, to help you guys think about, not about the stories that you're going to tell for your first features, not necessarily about the production process or anything. I'm going to look at you guys with an eye towards business development of you and your projects. And we are going to talk about the elements and the assets that you as filmmakers need to take control of from the very beginning so that your end game can be as successful as possible. And with that in mind, I'm actually going to start with Matt, if you don't mind. Matt, I'd love it if you would kick us off and give us a little taste of what it was like looking back now over the past 3 or 4 years, the different perspective of you as a first-time filmmaker and you now as a more established filmmaker. What's the difference?
Between those two things? I'm not sure. I think I work with the same people, so I didn't do the thing where you move on and then you have a completely new crew. I think I'm a strange person to ask that because I try to make my movies as though I'm like a broke loser student no matter what. Do you know what I mean? So I'm probably making my features the same way that everybody here made their shorts. In fact, probably more ghetto than you guys made your shorts. I can more or less guarantee it. Because that's the aesthetic that I'm trying to make in my films. But in terms of the team that I use, I think the key thing was for us not to change when all of a sudden we were making movies for $1 million rather than $10,000. And that was really, really important because I think what I see happen to a lot of my peers, not necessarily friends, but people who are the same age as me that were put in a similar position, is that they get destroyed. They get destroyed by all of these new opportunities or the ability to change and to become more like the thing they were trying to emulate in their shorts, if that makes sense. I think one of the great charms that can be lost from a really, really great short to the feature version of that is that all of a sudden, if you're lucky enough to be in this situation, you can now kind of do exactly what you wanted to do with that short, rather than the compromised version that you kind of got stuck with. And I think that in the challenge of making something that's really, really difficult when you have no resources, you wind up developing a certain kind of magic that is easy to lose unless you're very conscious of keeping it. That wasn't your question.
No, but it's a good start. We're going to go with it. But I'm going to jump to Ryan for a second. Ryan, when you're looking at... yeah, let's do it. So when a new filmmaker perhaps that you haven't, or a new visual storyteller comes into your office maybe with a new project, maybe they've only done one feature, maybe they haven't even done a feature yet, they're pretty new. What are the things that you might notice stand out about them that you pay particular attention to, both on the good side and the not so good side?
Creative or business or all of the above?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, these are good questions. New filmmakers, it really, you know what, I'll preface everything by saying this, and this is something that I've learned, just having worked at Blumhouse. Find your trajectory. Realize where you want to go, because I think that there are two different avenues for filmmakers right now. There's, for independent filmmakers, there is you want to make a film, you want to do a feature, and you want to ride that festival circuit. And you want to keep riding that festival circuit and see where your films go. Or you can jump into your indie feature with an aim of going, where do I want this to go? Do I want this to go theatrically? What kind of audience do I want to reach? And that's very, very specific, because if you want to do I'm aiming for something that's very mainstream, but very much you at the same time, then, it's something that changes how you might go make a movie and how you might script a film. Then there's also the more independent route for a more specialized audience. And at the end of the day, it's going to wind up on Netflix or Amazon or something like that. So, and I know filmmakers, for example, I had a filmmaker who came in that did a really great indie film that I absolutely loved last year. And I sat her down and I talked to her about her process and what we kind of aim for at Blumhouse. And I stumped her. Like, she was like, wow, I don't know if, I'm not there yet. Like, she's like, I want to do some more weird freaking movies first before I start doing the $3 to $5 million films. However, there are those filmmakers who come right in and they go, all right, got a movie that's set in a house and there's supernatural stuff, and I go, no, we want to do more than that. We're trying to do more than that. It's kind of like figure out what your audience is first. If you still have, I don't know, does that make sense to you guys? I mean, it's just kind of finding the audience and also find yourself as a filmmaker what you want to tell. And then, but the last thing you want to do is come into a room or my office and not have any clue whatsoever and hope that I tell you where I'm going to take you, because that does not have, I can't put any confidence in that whatsoever.
That's a really good point.
You have to come in knowing exactly what you want to do. You have to come in saying, I've got 3 great specs. I've got 3 great scripts. Have scripts ready. And then once you're done with those 3 scripts, have at least 5 ideas that you can fling at me. That's one, hopefully helpful.
I'd like to do a little test here. How many of you are from outside of Canada? How many of you are from outside North America? Of the ones whose hands are up right now, how many of you want to work in North America? Brave. Okay, so because we really do, we're focusing on the industry at large from many different perspectives up here, but there are definite differences between working in Europe or Asia or South America or North America. Anya, you cross a couple of bridges here. You have your festival hat on, which is independent film from around the world, and you have your acquisitions hat on, which is maybe a little bit more specialized, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you're talking about me being here. Oh, sorry.
No, keep going.
Oh, no, I rambled enough already. Go.
So what was the question?
If Anya, because you do the bridge, talk a little bit about what you see from both hats on. What you see as common elements between the films that you're programming at your festival for that $100,000 prize, everybody who's about to make a first feature, and the sort of things that you're looking at to pick up.
Well, part of the reason why we started the competition, why we wanted to have this kind of an award, which is always, I mean, it's a struggle every year to bring this kind of money into the festival, but we felt like it's so difficult at the very beginning, and what you mentioned, Matt, earlier about how, you want to keep this at least partial, independence of some sort, and you want to keep doing your own thing, and it's really difficult. And then this award is supposed to be kind of like a development grant in a sense for filmmakers to be able to survive for the next year while writing something new, developing something new, and it's especially the first one is difficult. Second one tends to be even more difficult, especially if the first one was good, because then people have expectations. So you want to be able to work on that. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to have the competition in the first place. But in terms of, what I always find interesting is that people don't seem to worry about things that will be happening later on in the process as festivals, sales agents, publicity. And I know that you have more important things to worry about at the beginning. You want to have the film made. But I would say plan a little bit better maybe from the very beginning. Figure out where you would like to have your premiere. Like if you want to go to Slamdance, Tribeca, plan around that a little bit. I'm not saying you have to cater for that festival, because obviously you're not trying to to make them like you, and you're not trying to make a film that they will just do your thing, but at least know what you're aiming for. Because sometimes then if something, obviously you can't predict everything, something goes wrong, financing falls through, things happen, then have plan B, but at least that way, you won't be behind with your submission deadlines and stuff like that. And it is really important, I find. But and from a sales agent point of view, people seem to be really surprised when I tell them to visit films. We did this tiny little film called It Follows, for example. So we do thank you on behalf of the director. We do independent film, but films we know are accessible and we know we'll be able to bring out into the world, help them out, sell them. And
so we're giving some key words here, you guys, that if you're taking notes, this is where you would start writing them down. We go for films that we know are accessible, which is going to mean something different to anybody that you talk to. So these are words that you want to expose the definition of as we go through this process.
But we, for example, say there was It Follows, but then that was an interesting example because I'm not a big genre fan, but that wasn't a straightforward genre film. It was way smarter than that, and it's just really, really good filmmaking. So, and we had Upstream Color, which is far from, a blockbuster, let's face it, but it's a beautiful film, and it's a very talented filmmaker. So it's also, we're not afraid of making those kind of decisions. But what I was going to say about the sales agent stuff is that filmmakers seem to be surprised that we look at scripts. Like, we pick projects at script stage. You don't just come to us when you have a film ready and you're looking for an agent. You should really start thinking about it early on and find the right fit. And what I find a little bit disturbing is when people come to me and they say, "Oh, so what can you do for me?" I said, "Well, didn't you come to me? So didn't you do a little bit of research? Like, well, we have this website. It's really easy to do. Just have a look at the catalog, see if you'll be the right fit. Because maybe I might love your film, but it might just not be the type of filmmaking that we're good at dealing with. So just do your research."
It's a little homework there. All right, we're gonna take some questions from you guys in a little bit. But I want to go through the line first. I'm going to go to the big gun here, which is Richard. I know he looks so scary, doesn't he? Richard, you have a track record that goes over decades. I'm sorry to out how old you are. You have an amazing track record of a lot of films, a lot of them documentaries or music based. You have titles. Right now, you have 3 films at Toronto. You have done some remarkable films, all with an eye towards distribution that helps the content owner, the person who creates the content and owns it, have a really play a big part in the distribution of their film. You recently helped with a film called Awake, The Life of Yogananda, which broke the $1.5 million box office mark for a documentary about a yogi. I'm sure we all thought that would happen, but it happened very quickly. Talk to us a little bit about how you see film, how you see first films, how you see working with filmmakers, what they're going to need to know about what they're going to have in place to be able to be as successful as Awake.
Well, I would also echo what some of my colleagues here have said in terms of understanding who your audience is. It's a conversation I'm always a little uncomfortable with. I think you have to have it once. Or your producer has it with the director once to say, who are we making this film for? To make sure that it's focused in that sense. I've had people submit finished films, family films to me, where every other word is fuck. I say, well, no one's going to show this to a kid, and it's not sophisticated on an adult level, so there's no audience for it. That actually has happened. That happened. And it's kind of stunning that somebody would go to all, and it was quite well made, but there was a flaw in the process, and they hadn't anticipated something as fundamental as that. I look for tribal films in the sense that films that have an inherent audience for them. It's one of the reasons I like working with music films so much because, for instance, a few years ago I did a film on Pearl Jam. And Cameron Crowe made this film on Pearl Jam maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and we didn't spend a penny on advertising, but we put the schedule of the theaters on the website, and it sold out instantly because everyone had their Google alert for the next Pearl Jam thing, and it popped up. They went right to their local theater and they bought tickets. So things like that make me look really smart, because it sort of just happens. So it's all in this. It's like directors saying that good casting is 90% of their job. If you can find, from my perspective, I can find a film that I know has an audience that I think I can access in a cost-effective way, then it makes everybody happy. In terms of Awake, because it was about the first yogi who brought yoga over to the United States in the early part of the 20th century. It was part of he founded the Self-Realization Fellowship. So not only was there were there loosely a loose mass of followers, there were actually buildings that had these people in them. They were real people with real addresses, and we knew who they were. So it was so easy, in a sense, to access them and say, well, there's an office in San Diego. Well, we know that's where the world headquarters is. Well, we'll play in San Diego for a few months, and we'll probably sell out. And Miami, all the places where we knew they were in force. it makes it so much easier from a distribution perspective if you come to me with your database, in effect, and say, well, this is what our film is about, and this is who we think we're making it for, or this is who we've made it for, because I usually get involved once it's done already. So it's useful from a filmmaker's perspective to understand who you're making for, create that database in advance, and then you can go to a sales agent or somebody and say, here's, we've developed this following, we know who our audience is, we know where they are, they're addressable, they're accessible, we can do this cost effectively. It makes it that much easier for a sales agent to represent your film.
So one of the things I'm always interested in, because I always, when I'm working and strategizing, especially with short filmmakers who are about to make the month, I'm always suggesting that you should be capturing a database, whether you capture that via social media, or whether you capture your audience in some other way. How many of you keep track in some way of the people who like your films? How many of you know how to... How many of you want to teach the people sitting next to you? So and this is another question, because I'm about to jump to the fabulous Rebecca. How many of you have ever used a publicist in the production process? In the States, we call them unit publicists. How many of you have ever done that? Two in this, 3, 4, 5, you don't count, 4 in this whole room. Okay, Rebecca, talk to us a little bit about the very end game. Rebecca does a lot of theatrical release, granted. She also does Academy Award and Golden Globe Award campaigns for foreign films in particular. And she does a lot with independent film. Talk to us a little bit about not just what you do, but what the elements are you need to have in place so you can do what you do.
I haven't done a lot of unit publicity, but when I get a film that I'm working on, I need, of course, materials, photos especially, to work with. And if you're making a film and you have no images or anything from the film, it's, in fact, I'm working with somebody right now and they didn't have you can get like a set photographer. They didn't have anything like that. And so we're doing screen grabs, which isn't always as good as having, beautiful photos of your work, So that's like just really a really, really key thing to have. And also just having somebody to write your notes and help you, write about all your filmmakers and your cast, and that's just really important when you're presenting your film and just having it all together. And when you're making the film, and you don't think about that stuff until it's like too late. You're like, I'm going to a festival. What are we going to do? Or, somebody wants, information about my film and I don't have it. And then, somebody like me or Kathleen can like help you, put something like that together.
So let's talk a little bit about
this would be for, not so much for short, but for features.
Let's talk a little bit about what the end game is on that particular note. So you guys, just so you understand what we're using these materials for, you have your JPEG stills behind the scenes and what the camera sees. You have your graphic image that becomes your iconic image that's going to get used in all of your advertising or your postering or whatever. You have your production notes, which speak about the production, about the process, your director's statement, philosophy. You have your credit list, which reads exactly, and I'll tell you why in a minute, reads exactly as the role on the film. And when I say exactly. And the reason for that is there are 4 major trade magazines, Hollywood Reporter, Screen International, Variety, and now IndieWire. And each of their credit blocks on a review of a feature film is somewhat different. And you have to literally give them your credit roll to that journalist who's writing your review. And if you make that journalist fight for those credits, they get pissy. And then all of a sudden, that pissiness shows up in your review.
Yes, it does.
Oh, God, it does. Knew it, Ryan.
It was nothing worse than when I was working at Shock, it was nothing worse than trying to, do covers on a film. And I would interact with the filmmaker and go, well, do you want to debut some photos? Oh, no, we don't have those. Well, what about, something? I did a little bit of unit publicity on the Night of the Demons remake a couple of years back, and it was really beneficial to them because what I wound up doing is I did EPK interviews with everybody on set. We just brought a camera. They didn't know how far it would go, that particular film, but what I provided them was just a transcript of those interviews, had some photos done. We did a few fun things, like I was trying to establish our social media presence. So these are things to think about while you're doing your film, is how much of your cards you want to show while you're shooting. Some films like It Follows, I didn't even know until it was at the festival. I had no idea.
But It Follows had the materials.
It had the materials,
to support it at a festival.
Yeah.
You don't have any photos. What's the festival going to put in the program guide? You don't have any notes.
Yeah.
What's the publisher's going to do to help promote the film? These things have to be planned ahead of time. Again, it goes back to knowing your end game. So you as filmmakers are thinking, I want to tell this deeply personal story about the time my dog, who meant so much to me, was run over by a car. Don't ever tell that story, by the way.
Is that the family movie he was talking about?
But you're not. But again, we go back to, and we can do this exercise. We go back to, okay, who's that story for? Well, if it's for little kids, it's a very small story. It's very sweet. We never see the car run over the dog. If it's Matt's story, I'm guessing maybe, and it's rather indie and it's rather gritty. We see the car, we see the tires, we might see the blood, maybe. I don't know if we see the dog.
You've never seen one of my films, I guess.
Apparently not. We see the dog. But you know what I'm saying? And these are all these choices that we're talking about. If it's something that Richard's gonna distribute, it's gonna be the dog, the car, the tire, a really good soundtrack from somebody really well known, and maybe a really good niche marketing equivalent.
I want to add to one of the things you were saying before, and that is that if you don't have a set photographer or somebody with high resolution images, it's a struggle for us to create the key art, which is the art Kathleen was referencing before, the poster, what goes into the ads, banner ads, newspaper ads. I've had films come to me with 4 blurred black and white images, and when you try to take a screen pull, even if it's a digital film, and make it into a poster that's 27 by 40, it just pixelates. You can't really help it.
Because what ends up happening too is then you have to do a separate photo shoot with your stars.
I don't even consider that because of the expense. That's the thing. You can't get your stars back, and you got to get a photographer. It always looks fake.
Matt, how much have you been involved with marketing materials during the production of your films?
Well, my first film was not something we thought about. I actually think that for directors anyway, I think this advice is very good for producers. I think if you're a director, do not think about any of this. They just make your movie. But on the new film that I made, because it was for Lionsgate, a ton. So, but again, that's not really so much my role, because people are doing that. If you're making a film and it's your first feature and you don't have a producer who has an eye for that or is not thinking about that, and it is up to you, then I would say this is very, very important. Like, you should have, they say have 300 images and things like that. The numbers are quite high, but you can get away with, having one day on set of a stills photographer coming in and take pictures of some key thing. Well. Oh my gosh, no.
Well, this is actually a perfect example of different agendas, right?
Definitely. It's so funny because there's a view. If you're making movies to make, if you're viewing your films from the perspective of the end goal of this film is to make money for a distributor and market, that's very different than if I'm just trying to make the single best movie that I want to make for myself. Those are two very, very different perspectives.
I think the second one is a hobby, though.
Sure, it could be seen that way.
And do they have to be mutually exclusive? Why can't they blend together?
Because it's very tough to keep both things in your mind at the same time. If you're serious about the films that you're making.
So when I have been a unit publicist for a very long time, and when I used to do films for Lionsgate, our rule of thumb was get 30,000 digital images in the hopes that you would have the appropriate photo approvals to get that down to 300 approved.
Right.
These are for independent features, 30,000 raw images, so that you hope after all the approvals the actors have, that you would have 300 approved, that they would then distill down to a good solid 30 that they could use around the world. That's the numbers, how that go. But these things aren't just the domain, I don't believe, in my agenda. they're not just the domain of people who get a studio deal or who are working necessarily with a studio. Things are truly independent worldwide right now where you're making films with or without studio money. So the question is, should they be thinking about this level of activation, let's call it, if they're not at a Lionsgate, let's say? Now, Matt, you're thinking if you're a director, maybe not, but your producer maybe should.
I think all these things are important tools that you can have when it comes time to go to a distributor and say, or for your sales agent to go to a distributor and say, all right, this is what we have for the marketing of the film. And of course they're important. But I think that the types of things that you can get away with having volunteers or interns doing them while you're making your film. I don't think this is the type of stuff that you want to like kill a shoot day to get.
And I think, so from my perspective, I don't think you ever kill a shoot day. Those always come first. And I guess what I would say, and this is good dialogue because we're going to see what everybody else thinks. My idea is don't get your intern, having seen what they produce. Don't do that. But let's go down to Anya and let's go back to Richard. You guys, you're the users of these in materials.
That can be an issue, like you said earlier. So I mean, I agree with what you're saying. That it shouldn't be maybe like your biggest priority, but on the other hand, it should be a priority maybe. But what you said about don't focus on it and get your producer to do it, and if you don't have a producer, then just don't worry about it. I would say get that producer. Don't do it yourself. Don't do it on your own. Just make sure you find someone who understands what you're trying to do. And even if it's not entirely maybe something, I don't know, that they want to do themselves, but you know they will do a great job and they actually get your ideas. I'd say it's a good match. And just I think a team is what I really liked what you said earlier about how you work with the same people. I mean, Dirty that played Slam Dance and now Lionsgate. It's kind of, I mean, it's amazing. It's a brilliant step up. And the fact that you have the same team or similar people, I'm guessing, right? Then that's fantastic. And you clearly trust those guys and girls, and it's brilliant that you want to work with them again. And if you get that kind of a team to work with you and they understand you and they understand your goals, I don't really, what Kathleen was trying to say, I think it's not like trying to make your life more difficult. It's just more about...
No, I didn't mean it that way. What I meant was that these types of promotional materials are the types of things that people will do for free for your films.
Yeah, but the quality of that might not be what we're going to need later on. And what we're trying to say is that there will be images, but there won't be images. We will look through them and say, we can't use that. Just because it won't be helpful in any way. Because I've interned enough in my life to actually know how important it is to be an intern at some point. But I also know that then there will be someone who will be checking that work and you're not a professional then. You don't know entirely what you're doing. You're doing your best as an intern, but you're not a professional photographer on set. And you just won't really know what to do and how to do it. So then the publicist will be happy with those images. And then it ends up being a waste of time because you'll feel bad because the intern did all the work and then, but it will be unusable. So we know, slagging off interns, I love them myself, but it's just that it's not something that will always work.
So let's, go ahead.
I was just going to say, use your independent know-how. The thing is like I had a friend who, as a director, if you have a seed of an idea, you have a script, and you're like, what do I do now? Well, you find a producer. Find a producer who's going to handle all of these elements for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But if the producer comes to you and says, guys, we need to find a photographer, we need to get someone to put together some key art, then use your know-how to find a great artist. There are great artists on Facebook, there's great artists on Twitter. So just, you, again, I back you up. You, as a director, you don't need to worry about it. You need to worry about making the film, but make sure, have at least a little hand in it. Do a little toe touch with your producer every once in a while and be like, hey, how are the photographs coming along? How's the key art? Can I take a look at that? A good producer should be showing you that stuff. But, there's a wealth of, great talent out there that you can use for free or for at least a small part of the budget.
Absolutely. What I'd love to do, just because I want to make sure we get to some questions from you guys, from each of your perspectives, and we'll start here so you guys have more thinking time actually. Just tell me who you think, and these are all probably going to be different people, this is all about them creating their first feature team. Who's the most, from your perspective, who's the most important person that you hope they put on their team in some fashion? Rebecca.
Well, I'm going to have an agenda from where I'm coming from. I'm going to say a publicist, a unit publicist, and a good producer. Absolutely, good producer.
I would absolutely say producer, so that you as directors don't have to think about this crap.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think that hopefully you're not trying to farm out people to add to your team. I think if you're approaching filmmaking alone, that is a very tough situation. And you're trying to draft people that you've never met before, that's always super scary. At least start with 6 or 7 people that would be willing to die for you before you start saying, okay, let's start adding people to
And
this.
put them to the test.
Yeah, right. Well, for real. Yeah. Yeah.
Anya, well, you're one person.
Oh, okay. If I was a producer, I'll add the casting director.
Nice. Tell us why, briefly.
Just because you might have ideas because you wrote the script or you had the script written for you, but I think someone from the outside world might have access to people that you didn't even have in mind, and also it adds value to the film a lot of the time.
Right.
A producer with line producing skills. That way you can manage your budget. Yeah. No,
That's
I mean,
good.
like some of the
That's
best.
good.
I mean, like I know a lot of producers, but they can't break down a budget for their life, you know. But I know a lot of great producers who also know how to break down a budget, and they get the most jobs.
Yeah. Funny about that. I want to open this up a little bit. Are there any questions so far, or have we numbed you into silence? Okay, I'm going to stand up and do this. Way in the back, right back there. Can you stand and have a mic?
Hi. Anya mentioned upstream color. Sorry. And I'm wondering how, I don't know a lot about what went into the production of that film. I'm just a fan of that film. But that doesn't seem to me an easy film to go to a distributor with or to find a set audience for or have a database for. So I'm wondering how you guys would approach that film or what you know maybe about how it was approached.
I can actually answer that because I spoke to the filmmaker about it. He had an audience from previous films, and he'd really captured all the data. So he knew who they were. And he actually didn't go to a distributor. He retained control of that and had somebody booking theaters and handling some of the marketing and advertising stuff side by side with him. So he was part of the process from beginning to end.
And would you call that a successful campaign that he ran?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I have no idea what the numbers were, but I think everybody was happy with it. And the filmmaker retained control of the process and of the property.
Yeah, we just helped him basically. I mean, Visit Films was, because we only got to see it when it was finished. And he's actually a very good example because Shane's one of the people, he did everything himself. And by everything, I mean everything. And he even wrote music for it. So and then artwork. There was this amazing poster, I don't know if you remember the image, but the couple in a bathtub. So he's just one of those people that he doesn't want to lose his control, and we respect that. And it was kind of, it was labor of love, and it was something we fell in love with straight away. So it was, if someone didn't like it, they didn't like it, fine. We didn't even bother with trying to sell it to them. But that was an interesting example.
His first film also won Sundance.
But it was a huge gap between the first one and the second
Yeah,
one.
it was 7 years, but I'm saying it was a big push. I think if Upstream Color was his first feature, we wouldn't know who Shane Carruth was.
That is very true, but it's a very different film, and I don't think it's actually Primer kind of was. It was a different target audience to what Upstream Color was.
There's another question way in the back. Yeah.
I just had a question about what that data actually looks like when a filmmaker comes to you and says, "Oh, I know this is my target audience, and I know who they are, and this is this X and all that stuff." And what package does that look like when it comes to you in a way that actually makes sense for you to say, "Oh, okay, we want to
It's a mailing list, it's followers, it's a Facebook page, it's Twitter, it's all the stuff that I'm too old to fully understand, but which I surround myself with young people so they can explain it to me. Yeah.
It's a deck.
Yeah. It's part of a deck, yeah. No, you can't just say I got 30,000 followers. You could say I have 1 million followers. If you don't have something to prove it, then it's just talk. So yeah, it's going to be a deck, and there's going to be something to actually validate the claim.
There's usually like comparables, if you're doing a movie that's like The Strangers, you put The Strangers on there, and then you say, Strangers made this much, and this is who it played to really well. You find at least 5 good comps when you put together a deck, and what the target was, under 25, over 25, stuff like that.
How many of you use social media regularly? Ooh, lovely.
Not just for dating.
Okay, next question.
Yes. Hi. I have two questions. One, I wanted to get, for anyone on a panel, your opinion about taking a section of your feature screenplay and making a short film out of it to promote and or attract financing for that film. The second question I have is, my primary work is in documentaries. I did make a narrative short film like 12 years ago, but I think now a lot of people would consider it outdated, which is part of why I asked the first question, because I'm thinking, should I make another narrative short from the feature, or should I just make a separate narrative short just to show that I can do narratives? Because I'm from the United States, and unfortunately in the US, there's this weird perception that somehow documentary filmmakers can't make narratives. So I was just wondering if you could address both.
So let's start with the first one first. Ryan, from your perspective, do you have any, from a development perspective, do you have any thoughts about should they take a part of their feature script and make a short?
I'll answer from two levels. One from Blumhouse employee, and then also from my own just experience. My own personally, I always say, well, why do that? Because that's money that can go into your feature. Why take the time and the resources and the favors and all that stuff? I never got that. I never understood that. From a creative exec, it helps offer the mood, but at the end of the day, it's all about the script. You know, I'll take a look and I'll go, oh, yeah, that's cool, that's exciting, it looks slick. As a filmmaker, I can tell you how to move a camera and all this stuff. But what it ultimately boils down to is how it is.
Excellent. Richard, what about from your perspective? Have you come across that?
Not in a long time, but I do remember a film years ago where there was a couple of scenes shot, and they were great. And the film got financed based on that. And the idea was to drop those scenes into the feature, having already shot them. And one of the actors in there went SAG, and they had to reshoot anyway. But it worked for them, and that woman continues to make features.
And there are any number of examples. Pariah, for example, was a short first, became a feature.
Whiplash is probably the best one.
Well, Whiplash, but also Sling Blade was a short before it was a feature. There's any number of examples, but are they rare examples, I guess?
I'm going to speak to Whiplash really quick. So Whiplash was a film that Jason Blum passed on. And our head of film, Cooper Samuelson, saw the value in the script, so he knew that Blum wanted to work with Reitman. So Cooper went behind Blum's back, shared the script with Reitman. Reitman loved it. Cooper then went back to Blum and said, Jason Reitman really wants to do this. And Blum was like, yeah. So then what happened is, because Damien Chazelle is kind of still new as a director, what they wanted to do was just like they did a director test. And so he went through the Sundance Lab, Blum backed it, everybody backed him. And then he proved himself, obviously, with the great short. So it worked out for the better.
Excellent. Let's go for another question. Yes, right here. Go ahead.
Cool. This is more of a comment. Liz May, independent filmmaker here. I just wanted to share an opinion on the point of getting people to do things for free. I know a lot of us in this room are emerging filmmakers, and we're all struggling. We don't have the money to pay people. But I think if we don't start somewhere and actually pay people something, no one's ever going to progress in this industry. So that's a comment, and I think there's a lot of people in this room that would agree with that. And I will hand this over to the next question.
That's a fair point, except when you're making your first feature, you're paying in blood. Like, don't expect to have the money to pay anybody anything. And the idea that, and I'm not talking about saying, yeah, okay, a bunch of people are going to work for free for you because you're so great, because you're not. Like, you're just a struggling kid, hopefully the same as them. And so the point that people should be, I think, squeamish about having people work for free for independent film productions, especially for people's first features when you're all just getting out of film school, I worry is a dangerous new political idea that might have bad ramifications for first-time filmmakers.
Feed them well.
Feed them well. I will say, so there's a really good example, from my perspective, as I do a lot of unit work and I do a lot of it for free, because I want to work with filmmakers who are up and coming, who I want to start a relationship with. I'm not doing a $250,000 feature because I'm going to get money, or because I get to spend the summer in Oklahoma. This is a really good example, though. I do because I really like that filmmaker and I like what they're doing. And that filmmaker for me right now is Sterling Harja, who has a film here, whose first film, Four Sheets to the Wind, I did the unit on. Got him a piece in the New York Times. I did that all for free. I didn't get paid for that, although I did get to go to Oklahoma. So there are, I think it goes back to looking for the people who can work on your team, who can satisfy all these parts of the puzzle.
I would say, well, my sense was that woman in the back was talking about, getting a bunch of young folks together to work for free and not pay them. I think, I know you do. I certainly, I subscribe to the Burt Lancaster approach, which is he once said, I do one for the Pope and one for myself. So, a lot of us, as we progress, sort of reach back a little bit and make a little bit more money on one project so that we can take a little bit less or nothing on another, because you see somebody with a vision who needs the support. I did that with one filmmaker, and Anya ended up giving him $100,000 for his film. And he stopped moving furniture on weekends and became a full-time filmmaker.
And he's very happy. There's a question right here, I think. Yes.
I don't know, guys, if you can just give us an example. If you would make an independent film in the next few months of an average budget for an indie flick, do you do a projection of, okay, we can go maybe 1.2, 1.5, 2 millions with the international distribution? Like an independent film that would do good in festival, I don't know, you probably don't make any money out of festival with a feature film, I don't know. Is there any money to be made?
Not this festival.
So, well, if the movie is doing like 10, 12, 20 festivals, doing okay with international distribution after that in indie theater, and then online distribution, is there like an average budget for film right now in the market?
Could any of us actually answer that? I think it has to do with the film in this.
I don't think, from my perspective as a distributor, it doesn't really matter to me what the film costs to make, because it's, because I'm talking to you, forgive me for commoditizing your art, but when it gets to me, it's a property that has to be marketed, and its value is market-based. It doesn't matter if it costs $1 or $1 million. I remember many years ago I released a film called Laws of Gravity, which was the first feature out of the shooting gallery. And it cost $38,000 to make. They went $3,000 over budget. They sold it for, around the world for several $100,000. And that was at the time, I remember, that Hook, the Steven Spielberg movie, was out, which I think cost $90 million. And I remember thinking, how many times does Laws of Gravity go into Hook? And how many much better films might we have made with that money?
Exactly. So you guys, we have a heart out for two of our guests. I'm going to try one more question from you guys, and it's going to go right there.
Hi, so so I'm a producer, and I have a production company.
And where are you based?
Toronto. So, but I want to make my own financing deals. I wanted to do that. How do I get a lawyer involved? Like, I have no money, but how do I get a lawyer involved to help me make those financing deals?
Okay, so we're not going to answer the part of the question that wasn't asked, which is, do we have to have a lawyer? We assume, yes, you should have a lawyer. I'm going to ask Ryan and Richard, do you have any thoughts on this? Is it,
How do you get a lawyer? Call a lawyer. I mean, they're everywhere.
Ask family if they know a lawyer.
I'll tell you, the first film I produced, I didn't have the money to pay a lawyer, so I called a guy I'd worked with who'd been in-house counsel at a company I'd worked at, and I said, you want to produce this film with me? He became my partner. He handled all the legal. I did all the other stuff. I got the grip truck on set. I broke down the budget. I did all the, the theoretical film producing stuff, and he did all the legal stuff, and he was my partner. He was happy to do it for the credit, and did it one more time, and then said, I think I'm going to do this for money in the future. But
you never know who wants to get involved in film. I worked on Frozen River, which also was a short before it was Frozen River, but the director's husband worked for this company, and they knew the boss had a lot of money, and so they asked him if he would produce this film, and he loved movies, so he said yes. And his name's Charles Cohen, and he ended up getting 2 Academy Award nominations, and now he has his own distribution company. So you just never know, and just ask people. And yeah, he gave money for that film and didn't expect much in return at all.
And he's very happy.
Yes.
Very happy. Okay, one more question, I think. Do we have another hand ready to go up? We really have? dulled you into quiet sense. Yes, right here, one more.
What I asked before, maybe you could give the example of it follow.
You meant estimates more than anything else, didn't you? That's how I understood your question. You meant
Yeah. I mean, it's a genre movie, so you guys know, okay, it's going to be distributed in, X country.
It Follows was a funny one because no one actually believes in that film very much. And we had the script. I don't think people expected it to do so well, even like in a million years. And then so it blew up. We just really like David, who that we worked with before, and it was a completely different film that worked with the Myth of American Sleepover. That was his first one, and it was a totally different cinema. But we like him. He's a really talented filmmaker, and we wanted to be involved in the next one. And we were lucky enough that he wanted to do it with us. But we don't actually do estimates as such. It's so difficult sometimes to predict. Not really.
I think this goes back to Ryan's point about producers who are good line producers.
Yeah.
Right? If Ryan's point's well made about a good line producer, and that line producer's really got a really tight budget that's going to hold, then.
Yeah, I mean, if you're putting a budget together, I mean, I don't know, it's you got to work within your means. I don't know if there's a way to project how a film's going to do in a specific territory. Yeah.
Matt, stars, maybe.
Right, yeah.
Matt, when you're putting your projects together, when and where in your creative process does budget come into play?
We're really budget conscious, and I actually think it's a great way for independent films to start. I think that's a great page one, is how much money can we get? We get this much money, okay, let's make that movie. And so the way that we structure all the films we make now is through something called negative pickup, where you work with a distributor and you negotiate the sale of the film before you even have a script sometimes. And they're like, okay, we will buy this movie when it's done for this money. And there you just got your budget. And what's so awesome about having a fixed budget, and this is what I think is so amazing about working in countries, I'm sure like a lot of you do, where your country is going to give you money to make a film. Canada is like that. Telefilm is a great program for that kind of stuff, where you have limits put on you in that your budget is just going to be this. They don't care if you have a car crash or if you blow up the Mona Lisa. Like, it doesn't matter to them. Your budget is this. And so you are now writing and shooting to a set budget that was given to you very, very nascent in the creative process. And I find that very, very powerful as a creative tool in a way that I think a lot of people would see it as a limitation. I actually think it's a great way to start. So rather than asking what is an average budget, what should I be going out and trying to get, go get whatever you can and then start from there. Because then, not only are you making a movie, which is the biggest thing that stops people from making movies, which is like, oh man, we need another $1 million. I guess we have to wait till we get that $1 million. What I would say is if you can get 10,000 or 40,000 or anything, or if you can get 10,000 and get all your friends to work for free, as I did, start there and make that movie. And if you make that movie and it's good, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine, because then you did it and people are going to be so impressed that you did that. Of course.
Not so much. Not the same way.
Let me say two things along those lines. That film I referred to before, Laws of Gravity, they said we have $35,000. What film can we make for $35,000? That's what, and then that's the film they made it for 38. If you get the point. I also had a friend who made a film for $400,000, and it was very successful. And a few years later, she made a studio film for $22 million. And I said to her, "What is it like now that you have $22 million?" She said, "I need $25 million." So, I absolutely agree with what Matt said. You have that money, and that's the movie that you make. It is a great restriction. You have no choice. This is the movie you have to make $1 more, and you're in trouble.
Okay. On that note, we have less than 2 minutes to go, and two of our guests have to leave really quickly. So I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to dive in, and now I'm going to say one-word answers. I'm really big on the one-word answers. Starting with Ryan, what's the one word you want to leave these guys with after this conversation about their first feature film? Wow.
That's just evil. One takeaway?
Yeah.
Oh God, that's so. God, you know, I mean, like, just because I've been seeing like 5 movies a day, 6 movies a day. It's more than one word. It's more than one word. Please, just be original. Be original, please. That, you know, I mean, like, that's honestly, look at what's out there and go against the grain. Go give me something different. You know, I mean, if I see one more horror movie in which the female protagonist is pregnant, then give me one that isn't pregnant and find a new way of putting her at risk and make me care about her. Ranting.
Can we put a guy at risk? Can we just have that moment?
Well, that too, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, but guys can't get pregnant,
Yeah,
so
fair
that's, you know,
enough.
but that's
Fair
the
enough.
one thing. I'm like, come on.
There's your movie, the guy who.
Have you ever seen Evolution? Have anybody seen Evolution yet? See that? It's not about the women. It's about actual guys.
Research.
Oh, no. Okay.
I would say don't worry about breaking the law at all when you're making your first film. And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean that literally. Like, just do absolutely anything you can to make your film.
I'm a big fan of Ask Forgiveness Later. I'm with Matt.
Focus.
Wait. In focus or focus or okay?
Imagery and friends.
Okay, imagery and friends. All right. You guys, thank you so much for coming and listening to us. Thank you guys very much. I hope it was good for you. I hope it starts the wheels turning. We'll see you guys all again.